The ink was still drying on the NDA when I looked up. My signature stared back at me like a wound, clean, final, irreversible. I rested my hands on the familiar mahogany table. Polished. Cold. I'd spent nearly a decade here, dreaming of this company into existence. 10 years of missed birthdays, microwave dinners, frantic sprints to product deadlines, and pitch decks built on caffeine and midnight panic. And now it was done. Just like that. Across from me sat Jerry Allen, CEO, co-founder, and today's executioner. He leaned back, as if we were discussing metrics, not betrayal. His suit was as flawless as his tone. "We're bringing in someone more seasoned," he said, smooth as a closing bell. Then he added, without blinking, "Let's be honest, Grace. You were never the reason we made it this far." That one cut deep, colder than I expected. But I didn't flinch. I nodded and kept my voice even. "Understood. Professional. Always, that's me, Grace Martin, ex-COO, ex-co-founder. Now just another name being wiped off a whiteboard." He didn't look up again. I was already erased. I walked through the glass office once my second home, one last time. No one knew. No whispers. No awkward goodbyes. Just quiet screens, humming processors, and young engineers still debugging features I had written in the dark 3 weeks ago. Tiffany, one of our brightest, a former intern-turned-developer, smiled warmly. "Heading out early?" "Yeah," I said. "Something like that." My office was stripped down to a single cardboard box, a mug, a photo of my brother and me on launch night, and a notebook filled with sketches from our earliest days. That was all I had left, physically. But Jerry had missed one thing. I never let go of the paper trail. Every version, every milestone, every strategic shift bore my fingerprints. I kept the timelines. I kept the specs. I had built the documentation for our core system from scratch, the same system that landed us the Series A. The same system Jerry now stood on like it was his alone. What he didn't know, I learned early from watching my mother claw her way up in business, only to be swallowed by a shady merger, that no one protects your legacy but you. As I rode the elevator down, the silence pressed in. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was stunned, hollowed out. But underneath the numbness, something was waking up. Clarity. Frontera had been my entire world. My sacrifice. My identity. And just like that, the man who once called me his ride or die had tossed me aside like an old strategy memo. I sat in my car, letting the engine hum quietly. Then I reached for my phone. "It's done," I told Diana, my attorney. She was calm, sharp as always. Did he give a reason? I repeated his words. I could still hear them like a slap. Silence. Then, "You kept the files?" "All of them," I said. "Good. We talk tomorrow. It's time we decide what comes next." That night, I sat Allen-legged on the living room floor, a glass of wine in one hand, my laptop glowing softly in the dark. I opened a folder marked Nova Original IP. Inside, code logs, pitch decks, contracts, version history, architecture blueprints, all timestamped, all mine. Jerry thought I was replaceable, forgettable. He thought this was my end. But I had built the foundation. I had kept the receipts, and soon, when the cracks started showing, when the system buckled under its weight, he'd realize something. You don't cut out the architect and expect the structure to hold. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the opening chapter of something new. Life got quiet and strangely comforting. I started going to bed before midnight. I remembered what weekends were for. For the first time in years, I wasn't glued to a laptop or chasing the next crisis. But even in the calm, there was this low, steady tension under everything. Like standing on a frozen lake and knowing, at any moment, the ice could crack. No one from Frontera reached out. Not Jerry. Not the board. It was like I had been erased the second I walked out the door. Scrubbed from history. But I wasn't worried because I knew something they didn't. You can't rip out the foundation of a house and expect it to stand. The systems I built for Frontera weren't designed to be complicated. They were clean, fast, and purpose-built from the ground up. I had documented the basics, sure. But the deeper architecture? The clever fixes, the behind-the-scenes logic, the way everything actually worked, that lived in my head, and in a private folder they never asked about. Months ago, I warned Jerry we needed redundancy. I offered to run training workshops. Knowledge sharing. Transition planning. Not a priority, he said. We'll scale first. Clean it up later. He never liked hearing there were cracks in his masterpiece. So now, I waited. Then, on a rainy Tuesday morning, the first crack found me. I was sipping coffee at a quiet cafe when my phone buzzed, an unknown number. I ignored the call. A minute later, a text came in. Brian, senior dev at Frontera. Hey Grace, sorry to bother you. Do you have a minute to answer a quick question about the data sync protocols you implemented in version 5? I stared at the screen. Version 5. The build we launched just before our Series A. The one that doubled user retention. The one built around my custom load balancing logic. There was no way Brian had the full documentation. Jerry used to jokingly call it Grace's black box magic. I didn't reply, not yet. The next day, another message. Madison, lead UX engineer. Hi Grace, weird question. Do you remember where you stored the fallback scripts for the dashboard analytics? We're seeing some weird UI conflicts after the last deployment. That dashboard hadn't been touched in 7 months. What had they broken? And then on Thursday, a third message. Steven, the junior engineer I had mentored from his intern days. Hey Grace, I know it's not my place, but things are falling apart. Jonathan doesn't understand the system you built. He's blaming the dev team. People are scared. Just thought you should know. Jonathan, the seasoned professional Jerry brought in to replace me. The irony stung. I stared at the text for a long time. I expected anger. But what I felt was something quieter. Emptier. A cold ache in my chest. I love that company. Not just the work, the people, the purpose. I gave it everything. And now it was falling apart from the inside. I called Diana. They're starting to reach out, I told her. Devs. Engineers. Even the intern. She paused. And what are you going to do? Nothing. Not yet. You sure? Yes. Jerry made his decision. I'm just watching the fallout. Smart, she said. We let them sink just enough to realize who's still holding the life raft. The next morning, a new email landed in my inbox. Not from a developer. From a client. Subject. Urgent Frontera platform issue from Kathy Hughes, Bridge.com. Hi Grace, I know you're no longer with Frontera, but our team is having serious trouble with the API integration you originally helped us with. The new engineering contact hasn't responded. We're considering pulling our contract. Is there any way you can point us in the right direction? A client is reaching out to me. Not to support. Not to the company, to me. Bridge, where was one of our biggest enterprise clients. If they walked, the board would panic. And that panic? It would spread. I didn't respond to Kathy's email. Not yet. I didn't respond to Jerry's message. Not directly. Instead, I forwarded it to Diana with one short line. It's starting. She called 15 minutes later. We need to talk strategy, she said. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me, because we both knew, sooner or later, Jerry was going to call. And when he did, we make sure, Diana said firmly, that this time, everything happens on your terms. By week 5, Frontera still looked solid from the outside. The website was polished. The social feeds were active. Their press release from 3 weeks ago even praised exciting new changes and strong leadership. But underneath, it was crumbling. Whispers were surfacing across the tech community. Quiet mentions of missed support calls, confusing bug reports, and delayed updates. Developers vented anonymously on forums about broken builds and poor leadership. One post even hinted at arguments among the execs, with fingers pointing in every direction, except the right one. Jonathan, Jerry's so-called seasoned professional, had taken over everything I'd built. And from what I could tell, he was breaking it one piece at a time. That Thursday, I met Diana at her office. We sat side by side, going through my original code documentation, version logs, and emails between me and Jerry, especially the ones where I'd outlined how the architecture worked. He had always replied the same way. Looks great, Grace. He never read a word. Diana tapped a printed thread and looked up. This is more than thorough, she said. If this escalates, you have a strong case for misattributed ownership. I don't want to sue them, I said. She raised an eyebrow. I'm not after revenge. I just want acknowledgement. I want them to admit it, that I mattered. They can't run this without me. That they were wrong. Diana nodded slowly. You don't need to destroy them, she said. You just want the truth. Said out loud. And almost like clockwork, my phone buzzed that afternoon. Caller ID, Jerry Allen. I let it go to voicemail. 15 minutes later, another call. Then a text. Grace, I think it's time we talked. There have been some unforeseen complications. We'd value your input for a short consultation. Happy to compensate you generously. I read the message and half smiled. Generously, funny how fast the man who once told me I was never the reason we got this far was now scrambling to bring me back. I didn't reply, I just forwarded the message to Diana. He's calling. Seconds later, she wrote back. Told you he would. Let him wait. The longer he sweats, the more he's willing to pay. By the next day, 6 more messages came in. Each one is more desperate than the last. First polite, then urgent, then slightly apologetic. Look, Grace, I might have been harsh during your exit. It wasn't personal. You know how this business is. Let's talk. I waited until Sunday to respond. Hi, Jerry. I'm currently tied up with other commitments. Can't take on new work right now, but I appreciate the offer. Hope things at Frontera are going well. Polite, distant, no promises, he called immediately. This time, I picked up, curious to hear the panic in his voice. Grace, thank God. Listen, I know things got tense, but we need your help. Jonathan's having trouble with some of your systems. It's slowing everything down. I sipped my tea. I'm sorry to hear that, Jerry. But I don't work there anymore. Remember? Don't be like this, he said quickly. We're offering real compensation, 7 figures for a short-term contract. I paused. That's very generous. But tell me, didn't you once say I was never the reason Frontera got this far? Silence. Then a cough. I may have underestimated your role, he admitted. The product's not working like it used to. Clients are upset. The dev teams were overwhelmed. We need your insight. I let the silence stretch, then said, let me think about it. And hung up. Later that night, I had dinner with Diana. He's desperate, I told her. She smirked over her glass of wine. Not desperate enough to admit what he did. Not yet, I said, smiling back. Just give it time, Diana said. A few more missed deadlines, a few more lost clients, and Jerry will be saying your name like a prayer. I glanced at the menu, but I wasn't reading it. I don't want to go back, I said. But I do want to be the person they have to call when it all falls apart. You already are, she said. They just don't know it yet. For the first time since I'd been let go, I felt it, not just relief, not pride. Power, quiet, earned, real. By week 7, my phone buzzed again, but this time, it wasn't another engineer. It was Megan Bailey, one of our Series A investors. Smart, sharp, and silent in meetings, but when she spoke, everyone listened. Hi, Grace. I'd like a quick call about Frontera's platform issues and your role in its architecture. Just 17 minutes, if you're available. I sent it to Diana. Talk to her, she replied. Just no NDA details. But anything from before your contract? Fair game. On the call, Megan was calm and direct. We've lost 4 major clients. The execs gave vague answers. But one of the engineers said you built the core systems, and no one's been able to manage them since. I nodded. I built the architecture before we even had a CTO. It was mine end to end. She tilted her head. Jerry told us you were involved in implementation, not strategy. I smiled. I still have whiteboard photos, diagrams, and Git logs, all dated. Before we pitched you. A pause. I'm not trying to start anything, I said. I'm just done being erased. She nodded once. There's an internal meeting this Friday. Serious concerns are coming up. I'd like you to attend, even just as an observer. I'll speak to my attorney. When the call ended, I stared at my screen. What I felt wasn't anger. It was something quieter, but stronger.
They needed me.
And now they knew it. There was a quiet but powerful shift in the air, one I couldn't ignore. It was the same feeling I'd had during our very first investor meeting, the day we received that initial $490,000 angel check. Back then, it was just a dream. I called Diana. "Megan Bailey wants me in the room," I told her. "That means the board is finally starting to notice the cracks Jerry has been trying to hide." "Does she want you to speak or just observe?" Diana asked. She said I could be an observer. "But you and I both know that if I'm in that room, they'll ask questions, and I'll have answers." There was a pause. Then Diana said calmly, "Then we prepare." Friday arrived under a gray sky. The tension was so thick, I could feel it in my spine. I reached Bright Edge Capital's downtown office 25 minutes early. Diana walked beside me, sharp in a navy blazer, holding a leather folder that carried more weight than anyone there probably realized. At the glass doors, she turned to me. "You're not here for revenge," she said. "You're here for recognition and leverage. Let the truth speak for itself." I nodded, heart pounding. The conference room was quiet, but it buzzed with unspoken tension. Around the long table sat Megan Bailey and 4 Bright Edge partners. One I recognized from a major tech fund. Across from them, Jerry Jonathan and 4 Frontera board members, both of whom looked like they hadn't slept in days. Jerry's face went pale when he saw me. He hadn't expected this. "Grace," he said, forcing a tight smile. "Didn't realize you'd be joining us." "I was invited," I said smoothly, taking a seat beside Megan. "I'm here as an observer." Jerry looked down, avoiding eye contact. Megan began the meeting by laying out the agenda. Officially, it was about missed goals and customer dissatisfaction. But everyone knew the real issue was leadership and whether Jerry had lost the board's trust. "In the past month, we've seen a 21% drop in enterprise usage," Megan began, flipping through a report. "Support wait times have doubled. There's churn on the dev team. And the last software release caused 5 major client systems to crash." Jerry squirmed in his seat. "We're aware of the problems," he said. "We've been working nonstop to stabilize things." And yet, another investor chimed in. "We're hearing the same thing again and again from both technical staff and clients. We don't understand the system." He paused. "Grace Martin built it." My name hit the table like a hammer. Jerry opened his mouth, but I spoke first. "I can't speak to Frontera's current operations," I said. "But I can confirm that I built the core system, the architecture, security layers, internal tools. I wrote the original codebase. I documented everything. I maintained version control until I left." Megan nodded. "We've reviewed her documentation. It's extensive, time-stamped, and verified." Jerry leaned forward, his voice tight. "With all due respect, Grace didn't act alone.
She was under contract.
Everything she created while employed here belongs to Frontera." Diana didn't flinch. "You're referring to the standard employment agreement," she said, "which we've reviewed thoroughly. But the key authentication system, the backbone of Frontera's data security, was developed by Grace before she ever joined the company." She looked directly at the investors. "She has GitHub repositories from over a year before her employment. She integrated the system into Frontera with full transparency. There is no signed IP agreement transferring rights to that pre-existing code." Silence. Heavy, undeniable silence. Finally, Jonathan spoke. His voice was low, almost defeated. "I tried to reverse engineer it. We all did. But it's too custom. We couldn't recreate it." I glanced at him. He didn't look arrogant anymore. Just tired.
"Small."
One of the board members, Walter, I think, turned to Jerry. "You told us the system was fully redundant, that we could scale with or without Grace." Jerry swallowed. I believed that was true. Megan looked at me. "Grace, if you had stayed, what would you have done differently?" I hesitated, then answered truthfully. "I would have trained internal engineers, built a proper knowledge base, made sure the system could run without me. But that was never a priority." Without a word, Diana slid a printed email across the table. At the top, Jerry's bolded reply, "That's not a priority right now. We'll fix the documentation post-funding." Megan read it, then took a deep breath. And just like that, the tide had turned, for real this time. I turned to the board and spoke calmly. The truth is clear. Frontera's core system, the very foundation of its product, relies on code that the company doesn't fully own or understand. It was built by someone who no longer works here, and now it's being misrepresented as an in-house creation. One of the board members leaned forward. "What exactly are you suggesting?" Megan Bailey didn't blink. Her eyes stayed locked on Jerry.
"Two things," she said.
"First, we need to correct the official record. Second, we need a formal licensing agreement with Grace Martin for fair compensation and proper credit for her authentication framework." "And Jerry," another investor asked, his tone sharp. Megan paused just long enough to make a point. "That's for the board to decide." Jerry looked at me then, not smug, not in control anymore, just cornered. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. 3 weeks after that meeting, the news hit the press. Frontera announces leadership restructuring amid technical challenges. The press release didn't mention Jerry directly, but the tech blogs did. Within days, LinkedIn was buzzing. Executive exits, reshuffles, rumors. Jerry had been quietly moved to an advisory role, a placeholder title that told its own story. Meanwhile, another name started trending. Mine. Grace Martin, the mind behind Frontera's architecture. After years of being invisible, hidden behind lines of code and startup slides, suddenly I wasn't just the ex-employee. I was the architect they couldn't move forward without. Megan Bailey reached out again. But this time, she wasn't just cleaning up a crisis. "We want to rebuild," she said. "Both inside the company and in the public eye. The board fully supports offering you a formal role, CTO. You'll have complete creative control over the technical team. We'll take care of the PR. You set the terms." I didn't respond right away. Not because I was unsure, but because I was still absorbing how quickly everything had changed. Not long ago, I was the girl begging for a seat at the table. Now I was being asked what color I wanted my chair to be. Then, like clockwork, my phone rang. "Jerry," I let it ring twice before answering. "Hi, Jerry." He sounded tired. Different. Humbled. "Grace, I just wanted to say thank you." "For what?" asked, keeping my voice calm. "For not throwing me under the bus. In front of the board." "You did that to yourself," I said. Not with anger. Just the truth. He sighed. "I messed up. I know that now. I was chasing headlines. Appearances. I didn't pay attention to the foundation because I was too focused on the spotlight." There was a pause. Then he added, "But now I see it. Everything you built." And I wanted to say, "I'm sorry. A year ago, I might have cried hearing that. Now, I just felt still." "I appreciate the apology," I told him. "And I genuinely hope you learn from it." "I will," he said. "I already have." We hung up. No more words are needed. That same evening, I met with Diana to finalize the licensing deal. The agreement was solid, airtight, and very much in my favor. I would retain full ownership of the authentication system. Frontera would pay royalties for its ongoing use. And, most importantly, a public statement would be released the following week, officially setting the record straight. I would no longer be a ghost in Frontera's story. The next morning, I walked into Frontera's office for the first time in nearly 5 months, not as an employee, but as a licensed partner and the company's new CTO. The space looked the same, but everything had changed. But this time it felt different. As I walked through the office, developers looked up from their screens. Some whispered. I caught a few surprised smiles. Steven, my former intern, now a full engineer, grinned and walked over. "You're back?" he asked, his eyes wide. "In a way," I said, smiling. That afternoon, I called a meeting with the entire tech team. I didn't come in pointing fingers or making threats. I came in with a plan. "We're rebuilding," I told them. "Not just the code, everything. The culture. The trust. The way we work together." They listened. Listened. You could see it in the way they learned, nodded, and asked questions. And by the end of the hour, something I hadn't seen in a long time came back into the room. Belief In the weeks that followed, we got to work. We brought in fresh talent, fixed what was broken, and restored what had been lost. Former clients started reaching out again. Investors who'd gone quiet began showing signs of faith. And the team? They were energized, engaged, and confident, but more than anything, I was finally thriving. No more working in silence. No more watching someone else take credit for what I built. I had my voice back, and this time, I wasn't letting it go. One afternoon, after a flawless product rollout, I opened my inbox and froze. A recruiter had messaged me. Then another. Then a third. These weren't just job offers. They were invitations to join as a partner. People didn't just want to hire me. They wanted to build something with me. And that's when it hit me. When things started to fall apart, Jerry's phone rang. Now that things were being built again, mine was the one ringing. Not because of failure, but because of possibility. A month later, I stood on a small stage at a Women in Tech Summit, giving the talk I had once only dreamed of. When I was fired from the company I helped create, I told the audience, I thought that was the end of my story. But it wasn't. That was just the moment I stopped surviving and started building something better. On my terms. The room filled with applause. But the moment that stayed with me came later. A young developer came up to me after the talk. She looked nervous. I hope this isn't weird, she said. But your story kind of saved me. I was about to quit tech completely.
But now,
I think I'll stay. Just long enough to build something of my own. I smiled. Good, I said. Just remember, sometimes the foundation they try to bury you under is the one you end up standing on. And that was the truth. I didn't elevate myself by breaking others down. I rose by reclaiming my true self, and this time, the world won't forget who I am.